Good morning and welcome. If you are listening from Latin America, we are greeting you to be with you in this third webinar, in this third seminar, in which OSMECA, along with the Dicastery from the Service of the Human Integral Development, CELAM, and Clamor Network, the Institute Hope Border, and some other instances as CELAM, our bishops in Central America are worried and concerned and had prioritized to speak about human rights and migration. Is what we are going to discuss. With this webinar, we are closing this series of encounters in which we have reflected about the importance to book in our agenda and pastoral and political agenda of our countries this so important subject, the human dignity as the center of every pastoral action and every public policy. In this occasion, we are going to speak about how we are going to know some experiences from the good practices, and we also have great panelists, luxury panelists. I'm Gonzalez. I participate in OSMECA. I coordinate for the training section from Clamor and CELAM in CELAM. I'm so glad to have encountered you here. Along all Latin America, we have received people linked from other places of Europe. Thank you so very much of every one of you. As I was saying, this webinar is following the series of human mobility and human rights, a look from the hope. The goal of this series is to propose a new look and prophetic side about the role of the church in defense and protection of human rights of the people in mobility, We're seeking share in this webinar good pastoral practices which could show the work of ecclesial communities committed with the protection, integration, and defense of the people in situation of human mobility. They are comparing three presentators. There, it's a lux. From luxury presentators. Father Francisco couldn't be with us today. He had some matters to attend, so it was impossible for him to be with us today. He claimed that he wanted to be here, but we'll be accounted with him next occasion. For this session, the Dr. Amaya Valcárcel is with us. For me, it's an honor because I have read so many of her texts and contributions. Personally, it's a great honor. She's collaborator from the section of research and reflection from the Dicastery of the Service of Integral Human Development, official of incidents in the Jesuit Service of Refugees, JMS, also accompanied Alessandra Santopadre, subdirector of the Office of Cultural Communications and Rituals from Archbishop from Montreal, and great encouraging supporter of OSMECA and other spaces. Accompanied us, Álvaro Botero, consultor in human mobility and human rights. He's senior investigator in Inter-American Dialogue and professor in the American University. Well, besides, he works in the regulatory offices about the rights of migrants in CDIH. He had worked as well in Panama, remarkable work. Thank you very much for every one of you. I'm sorry for this brief presentation. I excuse myself for this brief presentation, but we are going to listen to a brief space of more than 13 minutes, about 15 minutes approximately, in order to we could know the supports and contributions from their experiences, and also we are asking to from the different social networks from CELAM that are linked now. They could leave your comments from home. This is the disposition and finality of this one, as well in YouTube and the other social networks from CELAM. And as well for those who are accompanying in the other different channels and means of communications, we are going to read your questions as our three participants and presentators will finish. I'm giving the word in first place to Dr. Amaya Valcárcel. I would like to say the Dicastery, along with OSMECA, is collecting for so many years good practices. The accompaniment and defense of the human rights of people in North America, Mesoamerica, and the Caribbean. I would like to ask you, Dr. Valcárcel, which patterns have you found in these good practices that we should consider and implement, I mean, in a rigor? Which practices could support the pastoral action in this region? Thank you, good morning, and welcome. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon for everyone. I would like to start with an scene. Let's imagine a person that is arriving from Mexico after a journey that had never imagined to endeavor. So we don't know exactly where she comes from. This person comes from Central America, Africa, the Caribbean, Asian, Middle East. We just know that one day this person had to leave. There was a war, violence, or maybe it's just prosecuted, or maybe pursued, or there was no chance to feed their children, or there was just a moment in which staying there was no more an option because um, they were a journey of thousands of kilometers. And once she got to Mexico, she found something unexpected. The journey hasn't ended, has changed. It's not the journey of kilometers, it's the journey of the waiting for an appointment, documents, an answer. She wants to find a place for them to sleep, hopes sleep, working, calling her family, and hoping to having something that lost in the journey, the chance of imagine the future. And here's this one, I think one of the most important questions begins for our pastorate. What is the meaning of accompanying a person when we cannot tell them no more how much the waiting is going to take? This is not a theoretical question. It's a question that we are hearing in Mexico and some other communities, surely where you work. And precisely, I would like to share some three experiences that, even though they are so far one from another, these are teaching us something profoundly in common. There are three places, three stories, and three words: staying, reconstructing, and belonging. We are going to start with Mexico. In Mexico, we are living a deep transformation of human mobility. People who before were thinking about Mexico just a transitional country, now they are remaining in Mexico for months and even more. And now a word is coming, and it's especially hard to live. The word limbus. It's a juridical limbus. It's also a human limbus. But I don't know where to go in 3 months. I don't know if my children will be able to study. I don't know if I will be able to study. I don't know what is going to be with what is going to happen with my refugee asking. It's difficult to build as a project of life, and the church could be something about. It's really simple, but it's extremely hard. Remain within the migrants in these limbus. Hmm? When we don't have an immediate solution for this kind of applications, remain when we cannot fix the life of this person. The only thing that we could offer is our presence, our listening, and our ability of working together. So in Mexico, it's translated in human and humanitarian assistances, juridical accompaniment, mental health, support for integration. But there is something that is over all this: the conviction. The person could not become a file, just a file. Our first reaction before the suffering is accepting, doing. We'll see someone with hunger, we offer food, we offer homeless for shelter, we offer it. And legal need, we offer lawyer. But if we don't listen, we just treat the person as a group of needs. So before anything else, we have to listen. And I think that the listening does the opposite. It retrieves the face. It's asking for someone who has there is culture, faith, capacities, and dreams and aspirations. Sometimes we discover something that we didn't expect it, hope, because displaced people are not just only people asking for our help. They also require and they bring hope within. And so many times they teach us the meaning of waiting. Hmm? Hmm? I'm from Mexico. I would like to take you far away to Cambodia, a country where I have lived. I've been lucky enough to work there and share with so many communities and learn above all. Because if Mexico is teaching us what is remains within the person who's expecting, Cambodia so teaches us some complementary. What is the meaning of a companion when the time of coming back arrives? In the Diocese of Montalban, in northeast of the story of refugees, is part of the history of the church itself. In back in the 80s, while Cambodia is still marked by the wall, the refugee camps in the border of Thailand were a place of encounter between a church that was born and a population that has lost everything. There was the place where the experience had begun of Monsignor Enrique Figueroa Quique, today prefect, apostolic prefect from the Rampam, and from all the communities that he had accompanied with. And there is something essential in this his story. When we speak about human mobility, we think usually in two times, when we leave and when we arrived. But there is a third moment, there is coming back. And coming back is not always coming back home. So many Cambodians return after exilium of so many years with no work, no home, and physical wounds provoked by the mines, anti-personal mines, or lackness of vaccines, as suffering from polio. They have returned geographically, but they have to rebuild their lives. And there is one of the biggest lessons, I think, from the Batalban Pastoral. The welcoming doesn't end when the emergency ends. The church also has to accompany the reconstruction, the rebuild, and the human rights important within attend a piece of land, a cooperative, and a workshop, a job opportunity, and a wheelchair. It can seem that we are speaking about concrete things, and they are indeed, but there is a deep Christian affirmation behind. This person is not destined to depend always from the help of the others. We want this person to be a protagonist and character of their own lives, that could support their family, could work, that could contribute to their community, and she could say, I could do it. I can do it. And I find this connection, a strong connection with Mexico, because here our question couldn't be just only, how could we help this person to survive? We should ask ourselves, how can we help this person to continue? They're continuing borders to Thailand looking for work. The church has to accompany a different reality, not only for whom he has migrated, but also who's asking for thinking immigration, informing about human trafficking and labor exploitation. We are preparing for those who are leaving, but we should accompany for those who stay, because a father and mother migrate. The migration affects the whole family. We know the children, they could remain to the care of their grandparents. The communities lost young population. The human relationships change. The school could be affected as well. That's why a good migratory pastor has to seek beyond the person crossing the borders, has to analyze the whole community is being affected by migration. And here is another idea that is essential. Human rights are not ending on the border. The experience that we have in the border between Cambodia and Thailand reminds us the solidarity has to cross borders. When a person is arrested, deported, with no resources, when needs legal assistance or medical, the border could separate the states, but not our human responsibility. Now, the third story. We are going to change completely from the landscape. We are a monastic community in Burgundy, France, in France. The TC community is an ecumenical community. And what TC? Because answering to a totally different question, not just only how we welcome someone and how a person could feel belonging to a community again. It uses a language, familiar network, but it takes away also something deeper, is the feeling of belonging. And this is the experience of belonging. I think that one label that dehumanizes and invisibilizes is the label that is of refugee, the refugee label. And it's showing that hospitality and accommodation could be as bringing a service. A person sharing the person, work, praise, and talk. And little by little is not only anymore a person receiving help, but it's a person that is also being a part of a community. It's one of the great pastoral institutions we need to retrieve, because a hospitality church is not only a church giving but also receiving the other, the faith, the questions of the other, the capacities of the others, and let itself to be transformed by these persons. And we have to remember that we are pilgrims, also migrants, so on, different places, and we retrieve and see again these three places. We could discover a different way of path. Mexico is teaching us how to remain with the migrants, with the aspirations. Cambodia led us to rebuild and how to retrieve autonomy, means of life and future. And we think in Burgundy how to belong, to create the spaces where a person could stop feeling as a foreigner and start also experiencing belonging to a place. And these three places, remains, rebuild, and belong, offering offer us a little map to thinking the good pastoral practices from the church, because a companion is not only receiving in the border, it's walking along this person before leaving, along the way, in the waiting and in the call, and if it is possible also in the return. I think that this person and this experience is connecting profound with message of Papa, the Holy Father Lion. So it's changing the perspective that is beyond the borders. We need to ask ourselves why so many peoples are forced to leave and let the countries behind. So the message from Pope Lion is, and we need to leave the side when he visited Spain. He reminds us creating conditions for the people for living with dignity in their own lands. It's not denying the right of migrating, but my reach should be an option, not just an obligation. A person could be saying, um, should say like, I'm leaving because I'm seeking for opportunity. It's not like I'm leaving because I have to. And this is one of the expressions what our dear and beloved father is saying. So I'm returning back with the person we started with. This person doesn't know how long this wait is going to take, but is entering in a community of the church, and someone is listening to her. Is not asking about the documents. Is not looking at this person as just a cipher. Is looking about the person, offering food or offering legal assistance. But above all, I cannot solve everything, but I can help you going through all this situation. So maybe you could find a job. The children could start studying, making friends, and learning the languages. And could maybe someday this person could open the door for someone else who needed. This is community. This is hope. Well, we've seen that in Cambodia, we see the belonging to a community, and I start as well with this sharing with the community. So he might be definitively speaking about good pastoral practices, proposing as a service, but also helping retrieving three things that displacement could take off from the person: dignity, autonomy, and belonging. And doing from the hope that is not denying the suffering, but it's a hope which is listening, remains, and revealed, and at the same time was from a world in which few people had to leave their homes behind in order to not lose dignity and freedom. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maya, for this map of hospitality that you have offered and Christian experience of receiving as well, not only extending the map, but also receiving the stories, receiving hope. Thank you very much, because you make us present and you make us see in these different moments that a person in migration process and in human mobility could experience, including not only just leaving a country, but currently also the return. And so many times a forced return, like such a deportation, and it takes within some different affectations, social and familiar, as you will remember. Thank you very much for bringing up this voice, and also bringing the voice of the Pope Leon XIV, and also the commitment of our church in these different geographies, in these different landscapes, always showing the face of the Good Samaritan. Thank you very much, Doctor. We are going to take our presenter of this morning, Álvaro Botero. Álvaro, you have been accompanying people from so many different nationalities. People who were forcibly sent to Panama country from they were nationals. They have never stepped in by the risk of being deported and returned to their countries of origin. Could you expose how they work together, the lawyers, members of civil society, as well, allies within the Catholic Church, allow the looking for justice of these people using the defense mechanisms of human rights legal available? How could other pastoral agents reply this exercise of incidents, public incidents, and litigation in the continent? Thank you so very much, Álvaro. Thank you very much, Gerardo. Good morning, dear family, friends, and colleagues. First of all, I would like to ask, hey, I thank the organizers of these webinars for calling me to this important conversation about something that is not necessarily we named frequently, and it deserves to be exposed, and is related to a pastoral job, and of the pastoral in the essential pillar on the protection of people in human mobility. Today, just in answering the question that you just asked, Gerardo just asked, basically I would like to share the story of an alliance, so that it was unexpected and improvised, but it's the story of what was possible when lawyers, civil society organizations, we worked all together within the Catholic Church in Panama, particularly with organizations like Faith and Joy, Fe y Alegría, and the Pastoral of Human Mobility, so on, some other Christian associations, aiming for justice for a group of people who had been expelled from a different country that they weren't of their own. So many of these people, they were never ever been in this country before. So what happened in this case? Probably some of you might remember, but a long time has passed and so many things has passed as well. So from the beginnings of last year in a matter of migration, regional and globally, and unfortunately it's not so many, but you might remember in the middle of February from last year, 299 people that asked for asylum in the United States. They came from Asia, Africa. They were expelled to Panama, a country from which they were nationals from there, and a country in which they were in risk of being deported to the countries where they were justly running away. What is important to count in account with this case? This was the first collective deportation of asylum askings from third party people. So, and they were returned to a country that weren't belong to, and this practice has been replied by the United States. They are sending people, non-nationals, to countries extremely far away as a way of doing this more cruel and torturous the situation of these people. So in this case, marked, I think the starting of some migratory policies, cruel and inhuman, not necessarily migratory policies in so many cases that have been not so human, but there's a clear intention and aggravation of inflicting damage to the migrations with these migratory policies by the administration of the United States. And these policies are so they can setting up again the legal landscape in a matter of asylum and registering, and they have tested the legal statement on migration. So 18th February, the world saw the images of families asking for help from the windows of the Capri in Panama City. This was covered by New York Times, Washington Post, AP, and so different international media in Panama. What was behind these images? Behind these images, there was a situation of tension and incommunication. They were incommunicated. These people, they were deported from the United States to Panama. They didn't know they were being deported to Panama. They didn't know. There was a lack of access of legal assistances. No, there were no guarantees of the process. There was a detention later on, as this case was international visible. and the solution of the Panama City, they moved the problem to a different access. They moved from the five-star hotel Capoli in the center of Panama. The condition of the people that in a rest in Panama, there were a five-star condition. They were moved to a remote center of detention in the Darien jungle. They were away from access to the press, to lawyers, attorneys. They were just isolated. So these cases started being visible. So there was a spontaneous coalition of organizations along the Clinic of International Litigation Corner, right? And attorneys from human rights and my lawyer in Panama, me and myself, and starting from what we have started seeing in this case and information we collected, we answered with legal actions, urgent legal actions favoring this group of people. 18 February, the attorney from Panama, being of part of the group, he presented an habeas corpus before the Supreme Court of Panama. 24 February, he presented cautelar measures before the Human Rights Inter-American Division. We presented some of these cautelar measures. 2 days after the supplementary information, during the carnivals of Panama, the state answered to the Inter-American Commission saying something very important. These precautionary measures. They say they weren't going to deport this person we were protecting because it's one of the central matters in this. These people had arrived to the United States asking for international protection and asylum. They were in a country that they didn't know they were deported to. And there was a risk, and it was materialized with so many people of the group that they were forced to return. So to return into this country of origin. So this action slowed down the impulse of the Panama impulse that they were pressed to return these people back to their countries of origin. Other of the results of this legal action at the beginning of March, some days after the first answer from the Panamanian state bring monetary permissions and renewable after 6 days for this group people. They will remain 110 people from these 299 persons that they accepted forced and mandatorily to return to their countries. But the release of this person from the detention center, it was able, and the people they started to be moved on a Saturday in the afternoon um, in buses from the migration service from Panama, and they were left in a station of the metro near the Panama airport at night. So the group that we were working on in the case, we started seeing, hey, how could we do not to disgregate this group, and also looking for these people in the middle of the night of that Saturday. So they were in the middle of the street with no resources, with no money, without protections, not speaking the Spanish in Panama. So that's a little bit of chronology of the events, of the first events of this case. What was the role of the church? This means I want to be clear that the legal work I've described wouldn't be possible without the support of the church. When the group was released from the detention center in Darien, these people arrived to Panama as they just arrived there with no resource, without anything. So nothing else, just the permission granted that allowed them for stay for 30 days, bringing this trauma for the prosecution, where they have lived in the States and their countries of origin, where they were in arbitrary conditions. They were never allowed to communicate with the country, with the exterior. So on the victimization and the reclamation facts that they lived and they experienced in Panama. And there were, and when Fe Alegría, the Pastoral of Human Mobility, working with some other foundations and religious characters, they bring the step of bringing shelter on the first night. Basically, we look for resources from our pockets in order to let the money to stay in hotels in the center of Panama. We provide shelter, alimentation, legal attention and psychological attention, so they could stay there. I want to remark this, why this was important in legal terms, not only in the human dimension. As everything we did as attorneys after the release of these people, the documentation, what we have, the interviews, preparation of the testimonies, the legal writings, medical evaluations, conform to the Istanbul Protocol. They were confirmed. The evidence of torture and mistreating, and they were possible because our representative, they had a stable shelter where to stay. It would be possible to document the prosecution with someone who doesn't know where he's going to sleep that night, and the trust that an interview requires if a person is in survival mode, and the pastoral companion that may allow the protection of human rights of these people. Also, the role of the church was beyond their role in a situation of crisis such as this one at the beginning. The same organizations of the church were looking, how can we answer to this situation? What answer could we provide in terms of context of the beginning of the last year, where the international cooperation for humanitarian subjects has been cut, and so many organizations have some less resources to receive. So receive 100, a group of 100 people. So Fe Alegría and Das Meaning, they were important protagonists, and Ogar Ruiz were essential actors in the incidents of Panamanian authorities in order to achieve the extension of humanitarian permission that has granted for 30 days and then renewable, and they granted and they achieved the extension of this. So many of this group of people, they didn't remain the 6 months in Panama. Many of them, they start to leave after a couple of months, and it's giving us an important learning about this. A temporary permission without real ways of integration is not a long-lasting answer. So the extension helps bring them security and time. They both sometimes both things served us in order to continue working in the case. Now, the case is still pending. The precautionary measure wasn't granted by Inter-American Commission, but just the fact of asking these precautionary measures, we reached important things from the Panama state. They didn't deported this person. They granted an humanitarian permission, so they allowed them to gain some time in their situation. Then, at last, in relationship with the question, second question, and I'm closing with this: how could we reply this experience? How this experience could be replied? Firstly, I think that the presence of 5 key elements I want to remark. Firstly, the presence is before the paperwork. The comparative as actors of the church, and as you can see in the webinar, with the wide participation is in there, is that the church has its presence on the terrain and brings trust and proximity, the shelter, feeding, medical attention, psychological attention. This is not quality pre-legal pretension. These are the foundations in which you could build the legal strategies. Second element is that it's important trying to build the alliances before the emergencies. So in this case, we could build the alliances in the middle of the emergency. So actors with people, actors with whom which we had never spoken before, a call in the middle of the Sunday, actors from Fe Alegría, Pastoral from human mobility in Panama. So asking, so how could you help us with this group of more than 100 people, but in Panama? Attorneys from Pastoral, obviously find us ourselves in the middle of the crisis. What is the lesson? Accounted with permanent relationships with pastoral structures, human rights attorneys, accountants, universities, civil society with clear roles and mutual trust allows a clear and faster answers for the next time. Why? Because unfortunately, this is a status quo that we are experiencing, and this is going to remain for a quite long time. So the construction of these networks in a previous way is essential. A third point is that the pastoral agents are the first witnesses. So formation in the basic documentation, always with consent, confidentiality, caring the dignity of the people, not generating any other damage, because there are so many elements of what is seen on the shelters, of what you hear, that could become in evidence, and it could use in before tribunals and international entities. Fourth element, using all the tools at the same time, as well the legal resources, internal resources, habeas corpus in the case of Panama, resources of the Inter-American Commission, resources of universal human rights. Another important case is that, for example, place from Costa Rica. It was the case that went after Panama. The actions that they started before the Commission of Human Rights and in front of the ONU. 81 children deported to Costa Rica, so they served to Costa Rica to take measures before this group of people deported to Costa Rica. The fifth, I think that again, the importance of these networks and this space that we are having today of working in an ecumenical way. The policies, migratory policies, different from other kind of policies. They have characteristics, particularly by essence, they are transnational. So our answer, our response has to be transnational as well. Since the, I don't know, Patagonia, Terra Fuego, just to Canada, it has to be a whole articulation of the network among the actors of the church and the ecumenical actors and participants. Not only the regional level, but the importance of the role that could play the Vatican and that has played before in key moments. So our response has to be transnational and ecumenical instead. When networks such as OSMECA, CELAM, and along other connections, they could connect pastoral action with litigation experiences and beyond the national level. And last, the use of mechanisms of Panama. But the church plays the ground where these migrants could support. And this is a renewable voice, is a church supporting and giving testimony and persists before the governments, is a church answering and responding to the challenges of these migrants, as we have seen in this case, as we saw in this case today. Thank you. In the middle of the conversation, the importance of documenting, of making permanent alliances, and involving different actors that bear roles from the pastoral agent until the presence, as you had said, of the Vatican, but as well from professionals that they know well the litigation area and human rights, different international, national instances, as well the academy, also counting with the litigation, that they could act not only in emergencies, but as well in a permanent level in the promotion and respect of human rights. Is very relevant. Every of the steps that you have mentioned, and as well the register that you have left from this case in order to improve, to enhance the protection of human rights of migrants. We greet again our friends in social networks from the CELAM, America. Thank you very much for greeting us as well. Place your answers in the box. That's been disposed for this mean, as well in YouTube, as well in Facebook, and as well in here for those who are in this same meeting. There is a bottom of questions. Please, we start receiving your questions. They are very important for us because they allowed us reflection and extended reflection and also possible dialogue with our presentators. Actually, it's a real honor and luxury accounting with them today. So I greet the integrants of OSMECA. I greet the Clamor Network, our bishops from SELAM, the Hope Institute as well, and the persons working decisively in the Dicastery as the Archdiocese from Montreal. Precisely from our Archdiocese from Montreal is with us Alessandra Santopadre. Alessandra, what an honor. Integration and promotion of people in mobility. They are two of the pillars of the four actions legated by Pope Francis. And the Pope Leon itself is still considering that he has retrieved in the Archdiocese of Montreal. They are performing a very intense work in both dimensions because, as well, it's important to speak integration on this speak, changing from human mobility. So, in which is the base of importance of this? The Archdiocese of Montreal is performing a very important job, primordial supporting of people in labor exploitation, human trafficking as well. In another sense, what are the pillars of this model of work? And we could propose from your experience in Montreal. So for the other countries that are replying of human trafficking and sexual exploitation and some other ways of exploitation in the continent. How could we profit the experience you have already had? Thank you very much, Alexandra.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for this space where we can come together. Those of us who from different points of across the continent accompany people in human mobility. I want to start with an image that Pope Francis left us and that Pope Leo has taken up again. Welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. Today, I want to focus on two of those verbs, promote and integrate, because they are precisely at the heart of the work we carry out in the Archdiocese of Montreal. The first question people ask me is why insist on integration right now when migration policy across the continent are changing so quickly? I would say it precisely for that reason. When policies harden, when legal pathways narrow, and when public discourse on migration becomes more hostile, the temptation is to focus all our efforts on initial receptions, providing food, providing shelter, resolving the emergency, and that is necessary. But if we stop there, we leave the migrant person in a state of permanent limbo, dependent, without roots, and more seriously, for more exposed to exploitation. Integration is not a luxury that comes after the emergency. It is what turns welcoming into dignity sustained over time. A person who is integrated with language, with a social network, with the recognition of their skills, with real access to the formal labor market, is far less vulnerable to those who seek to exploit their circumstance. Let me put a name and a date on this, not just a number. In September 2023, the UN Special Reporter on Contemporary Form of Slavery, Tomoya Obokata, spent 14 days visiting Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, and concluded that the agricultural and low-wage streams of Canada's temporary foreign working program are, I quote, a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. He reaffirmed that conclusion in his final report to the UN Human Rights Council the following year. His reasoning was simple. When a work permit ties a person to a single employer, that person cannot report abuse without risking deportation. This is not an abstraction. Gabriel, a migrant farm worker in Ontario wine country, never reported unsafe condition. The liaison officer meant to represent workers, he said, have their hands in the boss's mouth. Speak up, and the first call goes to the employer, not to help, but to send him home. In Montreal, we have learned something very concrete. Trafficking and labor exploitation don't appear in a vacuum. They appear precisely in the space that integration fails to reach. The temporary agricultural worker, isolated in a rural area, without transportation, without knowledge of the language, with a work permit tied to a single employer. The living domestic worker, invisible to any inspection. The asylum seeker who has spent months waiting for a decision and needs to survive in the meantime. That is why integration is not only a social or cultural issue. It is a strategy for preventing trafficking and exploitation. The more the migrant context changes, the more urgent it becomes to integrate well and on time. I turn now to a second question. What are the pillars of our model for addressing labor exploitation and trafficking in Montreal? I found 5 pillars. First pillar, territorial presence, not just institutional presence. We don't wait for victims to come to our office. We go where they are, to agricultural communities, to migrant parishes of many nationalities, to the space where temporary workers live. One concrete example is our housing Le Pont, the bridge, center, offering housing and accompaniment to asylum seekers and migrants in vulnerable situations. Not an office people must reach on their own, but a space designed to receive them at the most fragile moment of their journey. Second pillar, working with specialized networks, not acting alone. The Church doesn't seek to replace those with technical or legal expertise. It works alongside them. In Quebec, we work hand in hand with networks such as RATMAC, which defends the rights of temporary migrant agricultural workers, and with organizations such as CAFLA, which coordinates social services for Latin American families, alongside awareness initiatives like Spanish language radio programming, No hay trato con la trata, that carry practical prevention information straight to migrant community. This collaboration allows us to offer spiritual and community accompaniment, while other actors contribute to the legal, labor, social, and communication dimensions. Third pillar, language as a door, not a barrier. Many situations of exploitation are sustained and often prolonged by linguistic isolation. A person who cannot speak to anyone outside their exploiter circle has no way to ask for help, understand their rights, or even recognize that what they are living is abuse. This is why accompaniment in a person's native language, or at least through trusted cultural mediators, is for us almost a tool of protection, not just of communication. It is often the first bridge that allows someone to name what is happening to them, and the first step toward trusting that another way is possible. Fourth pillar, training pastoral agents. Priests, catechists, volunteers, any of them can be the first point of contact with a migrant in a situation of vulnerability, long before any authority. We train them to recognize warning signs of trafficking, confiscated documents, isolation, unpayable debts, fear of speaking, and more broadly, to live on the same four verbs in parishes, in society, and in the workplace through a genuinely intercultural approach. This formation multiplies our capacity for early detection without the need for large structures, and it builds communities able to receive people well with a holistic approach. Fifth pillar, advocacy. Accompaniment alone cannot change the conditions that keep making people vulnerable. This is why we also raise our voice publicly, before provincial and federal authorities, and alongside other faith communities and civil society partners, for the structural change that matter most: work permits not tied to a single employer, real inspection of live-in domestic work, faster and more human asylum processing. Advocacy turns individual accompaniment into lasting protection for those who came after. I am thinking in three suggestions to propose practical steps that any diocese or parish can begin with the resource it already has, without waiting for new funding, new staff, or perfect condition that can be adapted to the context in which one lives. First, don't start from zero. Before creating new structures, map out which local labor defense and migrant rights networks already exist. Unions, legal clinics, migrant worker, collectives, hotliness, and offer a pastoral presence as a bridge toward them, not a substitute. Second, prioritize sector of highest structural risk. Here in Montreal, seasonal agricultural work, live-in domestic work, and any job where a person's legal status depends on one employer, sector where isolation is built into the work itself. No co-worker outside the farm, no days off, no one to ask. That is where a single point of contact matters most. a mass in the workers' own languages, a home or bankhouse visit, a ride into town. Often the first conversation a person has had with anyone outside the workplace in months, and where the church's presence can make a real difference. First, invest in training, not only in assistance. Here in my diocese, a single workshop can teach 20 personal agents to recognize those some warning signs. Training turns every ministry we already run, catechesis, home visit, hospital, or prison chaplaincy, into an additional set of eyes, without new staff, new funding, or a new program. A pastoral agent trained in early detection is worth more than many poorly directed emergency resources. Integrating and protecting are not two separate tasks, in conclusion. They are the same task seen at two different moments. I began with 4 verbs: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. It would be easy to hear them as for stage. First you welcome, then eventually someday you integrate. But it is not how exploitation works. And so it cannot be how our response works either. A person is never only received and safe until later. From the very first day, welcome either opens a path toward belonging or it leaves a person exposed. That is what Montreal has tried to learn. That protection is not what we do before integration, and integration is not the reward that comes after protections. There are the same movement carried out at the same time by the same people. 4 verbs: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate, one movement, a way of waking that no longer separates what should never have been separated. Pope Leo, in his 4th encyclica Magnifica Humanitas, reminds us that how a society treats migrants, refugees, and the displaced is a decisive test of whether justice is guided by fear or by fraternity. He calls on us to safeguard what he calls the rightful hopes of those forced to leave their home and to work towards safe and legal pathways, dignified welcome, and through integration. That, in the end, is the horizon that gives our work its meaning, not merely managing risk, but protecting the hope that every migrant and refugee carries with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra, for this dissertation. It is placing us in the middle, the human person, yeah, like as the referent of our legal act as Christian, as people in general, as person in general, and bringing out again and showing us how patent and in action the 4 verbs from the welcoming until the integration. Thank you very much, because it's also a voice. It's an important voice with this program on there is no trato con el trata. There, we have brief in moments for some questions. I ask your presentators that you be brief in your response. We'll have like a minute and a half in order to answer those. I will ask it first for Dr. Botero. They're telling us it's worrying the absence of protection of tortures and prosecution violations of human rights in our countries. What valoration have you done about the systematic attack of human rights defender and the response that is bring out in our region? Besides from Turkson, they are asking from where they were the people they were deported from the states and taken to Panama. And a third question: what's changed from international rights after the dramatical experience that violate all kind of human rights? Are still deportations to these third-party countries, and this is very worrying. What have changed? Álvaro, thank you very much. Yeah. What changed? Well, Really, it's a question. It's hard to answer and uncomfortable to answer. I think that the changes that they have experienced in a gathered way actually is an aggravation of a trend of hardened the migratory policies of criminalization of the migrant people, securitization of migration, externalization of the migratory control and asylum. It's been increased. Yeah, that's been exercised from the beginning of last year with all the series of measures from the United States directed against the migrant population, but not the general of migrant population. I think something is important to remark in accounting is that so many of these migrants, what we are seeing nowadays with so many of these policies is a whole policy of ethnic clean through migratory policies. What have changed? We've seen clearly a weakening of the right of asking and claiming for asylum from people running away from their countries asking for protection. We've seen great vulnerations in the matter of the principle of no returning of the person for those people who are facing prosecution, facing the risk of their lives, returning to their countries of origin. And so where the integrity could be in risk. What else have changed? Before we didn't see this kind of this exportation. The person could normally was deported to the country of origin. Once they get to the country of origin, the person was found in freedom. Now what we've seen, person that they had commit any crime, the maximum is have committed is an infraction, administrative migratory infraction, because in some cases and enter without a migratory authorization. But some other cases they were asking for asylum. They were solicitors of asylum. As a solicitor of asylum, you have the right of asking for asylum in another country, and you have the right of leaving your country. So it's an importance. They were returned to third-party countries, probably they have never been into, and not just that, is they placed in detention, in condition of this detention, to never have a step in this country, have never offended the administrative, legal, penal, legal offense, and deported to these countries with these authoritarian and populist governments. With the boom of this kind of governments and populists, we have seen the last year with deportation of Venezuelans to Secot in Salvador. It means it's not only they were deported to a third country where they were not nationals. So, I'm sorry, they got any crime or penalty pending, but they were placed in a detention, in a center detention against terrorism, with were people with no. So human rights, they documented diverse of situations in which the person, they were submitted to torture. There were also situations in where the conditions of communication of these people, they placed them in situation of forced desperation of familiars. They didn't know if their beloved familiars or relatives were there. This is a context that is so different what we were used to before. So all of this is given in a context in which the international organizations, as well the Inter-American System of Human Rights and Universal System of Human Rights, are as well under attack by these governments. We have seen through different measures recently, the United States government adopted measures to attack the international court. It's been attacking also whom are protecting the human rights or organs of protections of human rights. It's easier and commit these abuses and arbitrarities and violations of human rights if you don't have anyone documenting and no one who is witnessing the situation. And I retrieve what Dr. Valcárcel was saying and what Alessandra was saying, the importance of the function of the pastoral agents of pastoral in the places where they are, of not only being waiting but also documenting the situations they're witnessing before. They're essential, vital documentations. We couldn't achieve stop the group in the night they were deported from Darien to the city of Panama. Those persons, they will have dispersed and will have never known what really happened to them in that time lapse in where they were deported from the United States. They were deported through Panama, what happened to Panama, until their release. And there is with the role of you as pastoral agents, it's fundamental, it's essential. So how many things have changed and processes? It's been a call to show the importance of the base organizations, religious organizations, where we have seen changes, as in Minneapolis. There were through a mobilization, united and massive, of the citizenship in the streets. And was not only citizenship, civil society, religious organizations, organizations of migrants. And we have seen this in conjunction with mechanisms of incidents, mechanisms of social protest, of mechanisms of litigation. Those tools are still working, but we need to keep them alive. Now, related with the violation to abuses, even assassinations to protectors of the human rights or leaders, the context of the region is super concerning. Many countries of the region, they have records in terms of assassination of people, the leaders of protections of human rights, leader of environments, Colombia and Honduras or Brazil. Year after year, we are finding in the top of the numbers of unfortunately list where more, more leaders of human and environmental rights assassination. Summing up, what we have seen in Central America, in countries as Guatemala and Nicaragua, where the defenders of human rights, defenders of environmental, or the journalists are being forced to exile. Also, judicial functionaries and all the actors were controlled to stop the power are being object of systematic policies of authorities and government that they want to take out these controls upon. So that's the importance of the Catholic Church and the Church in general, the moral authority they have, but also the direct work that they could be doing. That is, I'm sorry, I step off the time. Thank you very much, Dr. Botero. It's very illustrative and important what you're saying in our region. To the Professor Alessandra Santopadre. Alessandra, how do you measure, how do you value the work that it's been the government of your country, where you lived in Canada, in the defense of human rights, given the political implications and migratory of the United States, exercised by the United States? And I also take advantage, as a general question, asking in general, but you're very expert in this matter. How we could train educatively in the bachelor high school and universities in order to generate conscience and awareness of this reality? Thank you. I'm not going to take much time. In Canada, it's not easy to work with the government. It's a government which now is close the doors to dialogue and the ability of dialogue in order to face with the church. This government doesn't want to face the church. It's a like government, so everything that is religious is leaving aside. But we are still justly together, working together with all the confusions of faith in order to be a unique voice before the government. It's not only the Catholic Church by itself, but all together with the Presbyterians, the Muslims, the Sikh, the Hinduists, because it's a complex reality. We are perceiving that if we defend our rights, we are going to defend the right of the other. And defending the right of the other means to defend our rights before a government, in front of the government that now, as never, is not listening what is coming from the faith organizations. So it's very hard, but this moment of difficultness join us together more among us. And that this is very important. So because of the formation, well, the training, I think if you have to start with the tools we have in the parishes, with the pastoral agents, starting dialogue with all the Theologies Institute present in the territory. We perform this here, the Theologies of Montreal, the Institute of Theology of Laval, where we started little by little, starting courses of human mobility, human rights, defending, valuing all that's been already of good practices in our territory, and ideas that altogether everyone could do it with no problems. I'm taking a course. There are many courses in Clamor networks, and there are courses online, semi online in Italy. So you could take these courses in distance modality, and we could train ourselves in this way. Thank you very much, Professor Alessandra Santopadre. Finally, Dr. Amaya, they're asking us what will be the most important importance of the good pastoral practices published by the Dicasterium of the Human Integral Development, and taking advantage, invite you, if you want to comment that you consider important in this matter for the webinar. I invite you to, all of you, to retrieve and review, for those who don't know the good practices published by the web of the Dicasterium, because we have so many good ideas coming from local churches, and they could be replied in other realities. Good practices and our pastoral orientations about human trafficking. So displaced by so I invite you to review, to share, to study these guidelines, pastoral guidelines. I wanted to remark 2 points of hope. One for me is just a little bit, Álvaro and Alessandra said, it's a work in networks, so important. And for me, the network against the human trafficking, Caritatum, it's a great inspiration. There's our religious congregations, feminine congregations working all around the world, in Latin America a lot, in order to prevent and to rescue people, victims from the human trafficking. And so join all together with these congregations and with this network would it be very important. It's a little bit one of the questions that I've read. So what could do in the continental, at the continental level, one way will be link this very strong Caritatum, this very strong network, link with him. Another practice that is very important beyond everything that has been underlined by Álvaro, is fantastic what they have done. It's going to the narrative, the work that they were doing before, the Scalibrinians with the journalists. It was fantastic. Train journalists in migratory matters. I think having allies in the world of journalism is essential. It's super important. Like sewing a network of relationships, permanent, as Álvaro said, and among them that there were journalists, academics, all the work from the diplomats, but above all, in order to change these narratives and perceptions, I think that the journalist has to be our friends. They have to be our friends at last. Respecting to educations, here in some years, the Jesuits network of migrants created 2 guides about hospitality for students of secondary, of high school, for the schools of all Latin American, and for the community of professors and teachers. Those guides, for me, are very useful, and still they could be used in institutes, schools, universities of all Latin America. And we have replied those in other countries, as Middle East, as in Arabic. Those are some ideas, but I'm grateful for your listening and the organizers of this webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Amaya. I commented you that your comments, your questions are being read by your presentators. By a matter of time, we can continue still commenting those, but they are very important for us. I will remind you as well that the platforms from Clamor Network, the Social Pastoral Observatory of Human Mobility from Mesoamerica and the Caribbean, the OWN from the Dicastery to the Service of Integral Human Development, and some other organizations present in here. We are so grateful. We thank Hope. So you could find materials, you could find courses, linkings, very important in order to develop our pastoral task. And in a month, approximately at the beginning of September, we will have the World Organization of the Migrant, and the Pope has sent his message, and the different institutions we are sharing this transmission, this broadcast please ask. We will be sharing actions. I'm so grateful for all of you who has been behind what we cannot see, and is very important, as well as the CELAM, from communications from CELAM. Thank you very much. From Hope Institute and OSMECA. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. This video is already saved in CELAM networks for your afterwards reviewing. So have a great day and enjoy.